What's up, y'all? This is T-Bob A-Bear, and you're listening to the Rule the Galaxy podcast. The best Star Wars podcast on the internet.
Hey, Star Wars fans and Rule the Galaxy fans, welcome back to another exciting adventure on the Rule the Galaxy podcast. Today is another one of those special shows, so we always like to give you, I gave the regular crew the day off. They're off enjoying family time, and I've got two just outstanding people who, one I've known for quite a while, the other we've been interacting quite a bit online, and he's always a good commenter on our show, so it's going to be a great show. And pre-show we were saying it's going to be a love fest, so I'm excited about that. I'll start off with the one and only, the guy who everybody asks me to have on the show all the time, Mr. Steve Glosson. How are you, Steve? Don't do that to me.
Wow, Steve. Wow.
Oh man, my heart just dropped in my chest.
That's wrong. That's wrong on so many levels.
I'm good. I'm glad to be here.
I want you to say extra prayers tomorrow, please.
Well, listen. This is now officially, I'm now officially messing with marinara. So that means we're friends now for sure. There's no doubt about it. We're friends.
That's right.
So,
I would agree with you. We are friends, and yes, I'm getting my heartbeat back again here.
Yeah, it looks like you've got the vapors over there, Joe.
For anybody who doesn't know, check out social media. I was doing a little ranting recently because I had an outstanding show with Mr. Adam Bray and Mr. I was going to say Steve Glosson again, Scott Rifen.
don't get us confused.
I should not do that.
How
But
could you confuse me for Glosson?
There it is. There it is.
yeah. So we will not be going live on YouTube with this because It seems to be kicking me in the pants every time I do that. But hopefully that lost episode won't be like Star Wars Underworld. Someday we'll be able to talk about it again, but we'll see what happens with that. Our next guest, now that we know that me and Steve are friends, is our new friend, Michael Nipp, host of the Deucecast podcast.
Yeah, I am so excited to be here. I've been listening to you guys. I'll be honest, the first time I listened to you wasn't until you had either Scott or Steve on. I can't remember who it was, but I found you guys because of that, and I've enjoyed it ever since. I've listened to every episode since whatever the first time one of those guys were on your show. And I'm just really thrilled to be here, and I love the vibe of your podcast. And so it's exactly how I like podcasts, which is free flow conversation, just the good, the bad, the ugly of Star Wars. I just love it. It's great. I mean, and so I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you for having me on.
No problem. And did I was looking real quick at your podcast, and I've listened to a handful of yours, and I enjoy those quite a bit. But I tell you what, over 600 episodes.
Yes. The one thing that we are good at is consistency. We definitely don't have a huge listener base, but we are good at consistency, and we are good with the small community that we have, that we built really mostly on Discord. And because of Discord, I think that it's just good. I mean, I've been doing it not quite as long as the elder statesman over there, Steve, as far as podcasting is concerned, but I've been doing it about 15 years, and I've loved every minute of it. I listened to a Lost podcast around 16, 17 years ago, and it just gave me the bug. I mean, I was like, oh, this is a cool format, and all my buddies were getting married, and I was like, we need an excuse to hang out. And the podcasting is what did it. So myself, David Dollar, Dr. Earl, we don't divulge his last name, but we've been doing it for about 15 years. Love every minute of it.
Wow. That blows me away. I've been doing this for 5 years, and I feel like I'm an antique in this thing. So 15 years, you and Steve and Scott all doing those years ago. That
Yeah.
blows me away.
Yeah.
Was Scott doing it 15 years? I mean, Scott's been in radio. I'm radio. I'm a radio guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen. So the other day, I tuned into one of my favorite Star Wars podcasts to listen to, and the host is confusing me with Glosson.
What would
were
his
you-
son say about that?
I'm Garrison Rifen. And maybe this is why my podcast hasn't grown in years, is because I do too many inside jokes.
Inside jokes, right? Exactly.
Everything's in the inner circle. Nipp, was the Lost podcast you listened to Jay and Jack back?
It was.
Yeah.
It 100% was, because
I mean,
that was
they
pretty
were
much
it.
the only one.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
were it. They were it, and then they were tied in with somehow the Junkyard Media guys got tied in them. I don't know if you remember Junkyard Media.
I didn't listen to their stuff, but I know the name, of course. But, I mean,
and I was loosely associated with them because of Starkville House of L.
Okay.
And the Heroes podcast, the 10th Wonder podcast.
Yeah.
And yeah, so my listeners all came to me because of Starkville House of L, and then a guest appearance or two on Rebel Force Radio.
Yeah. That's. I think I may have heard you either the first time on RFR, or back then wouldn't it have been the Forcecast, I guess.
Yeah.
And then found you that way, because I'm not a Smallville person.
Right.
Not to insult you or anything. Steve.
No, I didn't make the show.
So I didn't listen to your other podcast.
Right.
So found Geek Out Loud through Forcecast at the time.
There's one person in the world who I know, and his name is Dave Jones, who prides himself on that he listened to Geek Out Loud before I was ever on any of these other shows.
I can't admit to that. So yeah, that's good. That's good.
He's like, hey, man, I found you. I thought this guy's great. Dave's just the greatest guy in the world. And so but yeah, so it's fun. It's been 7, 8, going on 18 years.
Yeah, you've been doing it a long time.
Yeah. And
you were using an abacus back then to figure out how to.
Here's the thing. Like, in those days, you had to figure it all out. Like there was one kind of click and go, all inclusive, just do it and we'll post it and everything. And that was Podbean.
Yep.
And they were kind of on the front edge. And I think you guys used Podbean, Nipp, for a little while.
No, we never did. We used
you, Marinara, then that used
I still use Podbean right now.
Yeah.
It's my platform. I have no problem with them whatsoever.
We were too cheap, and we used archive.org.
Okay.
That's literally where we would post. We would do Blogspot, then the host was archive.org.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I learned all about web hosting and everything from my cousin who had jumped in on things, and I did everything the hard way for the longest time. And I mean, I still kind of do. I just, once I learned it, I'm like, I can't learn anything else. I have to just do it the way I'm doing it.
I was nervous for you, Steve, because I saw that Skype was going away. So I was like, how is Steve going to podcast?
I am so happy that Skype is going away.
I know, but
That
you used it for so
absolutely
many
thrills
years.
my soul.
Who's your one guest that can only do
Dave Jones.
Dave Jones? That's right.
So, yeah. So again, you start sounding like an old fogey, but I've literally been thinking about this week. Is that I had a buddy who was in youth ministry in South Georgia, and when my cousin started talking podcasting, I had kind of toyed with the blog, the Geek Out Online thing, and then he started talking to me about podcasting, and broadcasting is something I'd always want to do. Like, I was the kid who had a tape recorder and was making his own radio shows and stuff. I just absolutely always loved that. And so this idea of podcasting comes along, and I'm like, man, this is so cool. I got to do this. So I got with a buddy, and his name was Jared. I'm Steve. And we were talking about Jesus. So it was the Jared, Steve, and Jesus Jamboree is what we ended up calling this thing. And we were really just doing it to promote to our kids that we were, in our youth ministry and everything, and people in the community listen. And there was like one, like church newsletter that picked up on it, some kind of denominational newsletter. It's like, this is going on down in South Georgia. And we thought that was cool. But, out of that one, as in learning to do that, that's when I said, well, I got to do Geek Out Loud. And just kind of came to the idea of Geek Out Loud, with, because of geeking out and then doing it out loud and everything. But
Well, I mean, mark out loud,
well, that no,
marking out. I
right,
mean,
right.
that whole concept. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, see, everything spun out of that. So you
Yeah,
got Rock Out Loud, Mark
Yeah.
Out Loud, Geek Out Loud,
Yeah.
but Geek Out Loud was it. And so I really, but then I don't know. I don't want to go through my history, but I've been thinking about this a lot, and the fact that there are like someone said like 5 million podcasts
Oh, easily. Yeah, there has to be.
on the internet. I think that's the number I heard. Maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's like 17 million. Something. It's some ungodly number of
Yeah,
podcasts
yeah.
that are out there now. And I thought when I started doing this, if I said podcast, people said, "What's a podcast?"
Mm-hmm.
And it's become just such a term in the vernacular in the past 2 decades. And I'm telling you, I don't know if I squandered opportunity, if I didn't know enough to really make an impact or what, but there are sometimes I see people doing stuff. I'm like, they're doing what I was doing. They're doing what I wanted to do. And they just somehow, they fell into this, and all I can look at it and say it must be hard work is what they did.
Yeah, I mean,
I
my
never really put
problem.
into it was hard work.
Yeah, my problem with it was always from the beginning. I felt like it was just a hobby, and so I wasn't going to put much more energy into it than that. Whereas, David, he always wanted to do more with it than I did. He's the one that if we ever had like any real guests or whatever, which we've only done that maybe 2 or 3 times. We had John Christ one time, who's a stand-up comedian, and we had some lady from Trading Spaces on one time. I can't remember her name. But so Dave would always want guests, and that's never what it was for me.
Right.
Trying to get like celebrity guests onto a movie show, it was just a hobby thing, and so yeah, I mean, and it still is to me. That's basically how I come at it.
Well, I started this out because when my wife first said, "Hey, you need an iPhone," right? I'm like, "Okay, I'll get an iPhone. I want to try that out. It looks cool." And then I saw this thing about I'm like, "What is a podcast?" I have no idea what it is. And of course, you do that thing. Well, let me type in a topic and see what it can. And that's where you heard about Forcecast and Rebel Force Radio and then yes, hearing Steve on there, hearing Adam Bray on there, that kind of got me going. Then hearing about Scott Riffin's my Star Wars story, and then here's Star Wars Report. Those were all ones where I was like, wow, this is great. And so for years, I don't know, probably a decade, I sat there and my son and I were like, these are great. I love listening to these. And then when my son got into the entertainment industry and was really into radio and all that, we were like, we can do this. Let's try it. And at that time, he was in a radio studio. We could do it all in a professional radio studio once a week, and it was great. And then it came to where we had to part ways, and he got busy, and I started doing it on a shoestring and bubble gum right here in my house. And so it's very weird how it's changed. But I will tell you this: my brother Tony, who was one of the first people I had on the show, and he was a regular for the first like 6 months. But Tony's got 3 little kids. Can't be a regular when you got three
Right.
kids. He showed me how to use. This is how antiquated I am. He showed me how to use iMovie, which I'd never used before. Tony's in that industry. He makes films, edits films, all that kind of stuff. And he said, you can pretty much do anything you want if you can drop a recording into iMovie. And I said, really? So he showed me how to use it. I called him the other day and I said, you realize Rule of the Galaxy is over 300 and whatever episodes in. And after every show, I go to iMovie and do the things you taught me to do
That's
to
cool.
either put it on YouTube or to make it into a podcast.
Yeah.
And I was like, that one little thing you told me 5 years ago, I was like, it's that important. I still use it today. And I know I've heard all you guys talk about, oh, are you using this program? Are you using that program? No, I don't. I get on my Mac and then I go to iMovie, right? I mean, I'm that simple. So I sit there and wonder how much more professional and easier are people doing this than what I'm doing. So I don't know, but it's been an adventure, that's for sure.
Oh, I mean, there would not be a Deucecast without David because he does all the editing and everything. I'm just the talent. I'm just the pretty face. And so I have never tried. I'm an old curmudgeon. I have never tried to learn how to edit a podcast. I just have never done it. So without David, this thing would not happen for us each week.
Well, and David loves the theater of the mind kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like there when I first listened to you guys, um, and he was doing the high five, Mikey, high five, Pinky, right?
Right, right.
And I was just like, are they really in the same room together?
Well, we were for a long time. We were for before the pandemic. We were in the
Yeah.
same room. We would record 4 episodes in a night. Get done
Well,
at about 2 a.m.
that's right. That's right.
And we would bank them and release so we could still release weekly, but we'd record all 4 in like one night. And then the pandemic happened, and of course everybody started using Zoom
Yeah.
or Skype and like everything. So yeah.
It's weird how we are where we are to this day. And I was talking to my daughter this morning. I went and took my daughter and my grandson Chick-fil-A breakfast because my wife's
Nice.
out of town and her husband's out of town, and so she lives right down the street. And I was like, "Honey, let me bring you breakfast." And so
That's great.
we sat there and we talked about it, and we were talking about where we are technology wise. And then I was telling her, I was like, you got to remember that when I was born, we had a rotary phone with a long cord on it. And
Right.
that was our only form of communication. And I was like, also I was born 20 I this hit me in my head just the other night. I was born 26 years after World War II ended.
Yeah.
Mm,
And
That
that
really hits hard when you think
yes,
mm,
about that.
yes, it wasn't that
Um,
long.
no, but we look at it and I'm like, now my grandson who's 1, who I was sitting there eating Chick-fil-A with, I was like, 25 years from now, what's it gonna be like for him?
I
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
It's
wild.
it's absolutely crazy to think about
Well,
because yeah.
I was talking to my wife last night. We're watching a show, and the kid has gone off to college, and so his parents are texting him at college, and I'm like, and she's like, "Did you stay in touch with your parents when you went to college?" I said, "Yeah." I said they kind of had a standing quote unquote rule that I need to call them on Saturdays. And I
Mhm.
said, so part of my Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening before I got, going with everything else would be I'd call my folks and talk to them. And she said, "Oh, well that's cool." I'm like, "Yeah." I said you had to either get to the payphone in the dorm, I said, or I'd go down to the common area to the big place to the student, place where all the kids were where all the students were at and studying and stuff and get on one of the payphones. She's like, "Wait a minute. You had to call them from a payphone?" I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't have a cell phone." I said, "It was 1996, 1995,
Yeah.
1997." I said, "I didn't have a cell phone." I said, "I didn't get my first cell phone until I had a career in, and I said, "That was 2001 before I had a cell phone." She's like, "I can't imagine. I don't understand this at all." And I'm like,
Mm.
"Well," I said, "I don't know that I had an email address until 1997." Um,
Yeah, I had an AOL address as my
yeah.
first one, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
still
Of course
have that.
you
I
did.
still have it.
I don't know if mine still exists or not. I wouldn't even know how to check it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
My first email address was, and everybody can know this, I don't care, email me if you want, molinaro@yahoo.com. And to this day, my main email address is molinaro@yahoo.com.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I feel great. I told my daughter the other day, I was like, you need to keep that running. I'll give you the password when I'm gone. That needs to keep going because how often now can you put just your first or last name and make it your email
Yeah.
address?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't do that. But we, it's crazy to think about that. And Steve, you brought that up, which made me think. Going back into my day,
Mhm.
my kids were joking because I said that I could only call my then girlfriend, then fiance, now wife, at college once a week because I had to pay my dad long distance bill
Mm,
to
yep.
call her.
Mm-hmm.
And that once a week we each wrote each other a letter. And she's kept everything. She's kept all of our letters, all that kind of stuff. But my kids were blown away. I said, we didn't just get to share every thought we had with each other every minute of the day. Like there's no missing that other person, right? There's no
Right.
I can't believe I get to hear her voice kind of feeling now because you're in constant contact with them every day, all day now.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild. And if you want to see them, just FaceTime them.
Right. Right. Yeah.
My parents would give me phone cards to call them, so they would like put the
Yeah.
money on the
There you
phone
go. Yeah.
cards.
The day
Nice.
the age of the phone card was
Yeah.
there. My dad got just for our family to be able to call from wherever we were. He got us an 800 number that called directly to our. So it was toll free to call the house. It was cheaper than like call and collect.
Okay.
If you called collect, there was something
Yeah.
about like,
Oh, yeah. It was cheaper.
and so he got an 800 number that we would call, and and that, but it was just for our family. Like you didn't, no one else had that number. Um, and so I'd be calling from Virginia. My brother, if he was on the road somewhere, he'd call from somewhere else. And
Mhm.
it's just so crazy. Like re- long distance used to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
and they tried to keep that with cell phones and everything to still be a thing. Like you've got so many local minutes, so many long distance.
Right. Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, paying for minutes used to be I guess
Mm.
people
Yeah.
still may do that if they do the prepaid stuff, but like paying for texts,
Yeah. Oh, sure.
like you
Yeah.
get a bill and be like, why do I have an extra $10 on this bill? Well, I texted this many times that I shouldn't have texted,
Mm.
um, it's crazy. And so I don't know. Thanks. Welcome to Rule the Galaxy, everybody.
I was going to say this is Rule the Nursing Home.
Yeah.
We're here to just talk about the past.
The Star Wars podcast where we reminisce our lives and talk about old technology. So,
Yeah, Steve, let's face it, we usually are either talking about Saturday morning cartoons,
well,
comic books,
yeah,
or things like that. So it fits into what our shows usually are.
that's true. That's true.
I tried to ask Adam and Scott this. So I had a question ready for them. With everything going on in the Star Wars world, I'm going to bring it back because I've got some other topics, but I figured I'd start off with this one. With everything going on in Star Wars land today, what is your state, or where are you in your Star Wars fandom right now?
Well, I mean, I'll dive in, Steve. I'll let Steve think about it a little bit.
That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to think of the
Because
best way to
I
answer
think
this
he's in a
question.
little bit different place than I am. I still definitely am very active in the sense that I keep up with all the shows. Um, I enjoy what I can out of the shows. There's definitely some items in each of the shows that I don't love, but I try and cling to those things that I really enjoy. Um, as far as keeping up with anything outside of television or movies and whatnot, I stopped doing that.
Mm-hmm.
The High Republic just was not for me. I did, I had a goal when they came out and said this everything's canon. I was like, I'm doing it. I'm all in, baby. And then I consistently was keeping up with the books and the comics, and then all of a sudden the High Republic hit, and
Mm.
it just wasn't for me. That's for different people, and that's fine. They can enjoy it if they want to. It just was never my thing, and so thusly, I didn't love the Acolyte much because it felt like it had so many ties to the High Republic. I know it's several years after, but it's still just it wasn't a show that I loved. But I mean, I still consider myself a pretty strong Star Wars fan compared to a normal person for sure. But I don't keep up with anything more than whatever television show. And even I love the anything animated I'll keep up with. I mean, I'll even keep up with Visions. I like some of that stuff in Visions. I like going outside of the universe and doing different things. I think there's great storytelling opportunity there. And Visions in certain episodes did a really good job of doing that.
Okay, I like it.
Um, yeah, Star Wars is cool, man. Uh, it's so weird. Let me start by saying this. I have always been the type person that if I feel like I'm not wanted, I'm cool with bailing, getting on out of there. Um, and I really kind of have felt like in the past few years, how 6, 7 years that I, as a Star Wars fan, have not really been wanted. Not necessarily by other fans, but by the creators of Star Wars. Um, I'm one of those nearly 50-year-old, you know, original trilogy guys, but I also was a staunch defender of the prequels.
Mhm.
Huge fan of the Clone Wars. I
Mhm.
um, you know, I I loved Rebels. I think I think it's safe to say that I was banging that Force Awakens drum just as hard as I could leading into the Force Awakens, and even after the Force Awakens, going into Rogue One. There was excitement. Now, when I realized that I was in a different world of Star Wars when I first saw the Force Awakens and said, okay, this is something different, but there's enough there to love and like that I can still take this journey. But things change, and it's not just that I didn't enjoy a movie or two. It's that fandom really took a weird turn, and we've talked about that ad nauseum. But I'll say this: that I enjoy the things I enjoy, and I try not to crap too much on the things that I don't enjoy. So, for example, right now I've got a Geek Out Loud that's got to get out there, and in about 45 minutes of that Geek Out Loud is going to be me and Shaz Bazaar riding down the road talking about Skeleton Crew.
Okay.
And I just was so charmed by what Skeleton Crew was. I thought it was a great little show. It was not. It was almost Stranger Things for Star Wars. Not that the kids, not that it was like that horror kind of genre, but it was that 80s throwback kind of thing. It felt like something that George Lucas could have made, after he watched Goonies and said, I think I want to do this with Star Wars. It felt like what he wanted the Ewok adventure to be, that kind of thing. It really did have just such a great feeling of all the nostalgia, and there was never really any like cameo. Or I kept expecting Hondo to show up at some point, but there was never anything done like that. That was like, we're doing this just to kind of give you the ooh, look at there they are. Like, they made that show, outside of being a Star Wars show, they made that show stand on its own merit. There was no teaser of the Death Star at the end. There was no open the door and there's Yoda. There was no there was none of that kind of stuff. There was no Ahsoka showing up kind of thing. It was, we're going to make this show have to stand on its own. Here's a hut, that's fun,
Right.
but at the same time, it's like, cool, man, that's great. But and it was so much fun, and it was such a neat concept to turn everything on its head. Like, everyone's always looking for the lost city of gold. No one's ever from the lost city of gold, not knowing they're from the lost city of gold,
Right.
And what a neat kind of treasure island, Goonies, E.T., just great Spielbergian, Lucasian, Ron Howardish kind of thing that they did. And so I found myself really just and the fandom juice is really energized by what they did. So much so that I'm like, as the hype for Andor season 2 is coming up, and I was not a big fan of the first season, I'm like, I didn't watch this. I might have to check it. Like, it got me ready to check something new out again. Um, I, 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 and that's a weird, and the thing is like, for me, that's a weird place to be, because I remember, to go back to part of our earlier conversation, when I started Geek Out Loud, the reason I did just a general geek podcast is because the Forcecast was already doing Star Wars, and I felt like I don't need to even try to squeeze in there. I didn't think that I had the chops to get in there and do a Star Wars podcast, because those guys were doing what I would do. And so, rather than put something similar to what they were doing out there, I said, well, I'm going to make my own way over here. And I even waited. I don't know when I did my first talk of Star Wars on Geek Out Loud, but I do remember that it was a big deal for me to get to finally talk about Star Wars, because I'd kind of sat on it. But it was the foundation of my geekdom. Star Wars is that thing that's been with me my whole life. Star Wars, and so I can't get away from it, but I'm also not as fired up maybe as I used to be. But I'm always keeping an eye on it. I'm always checking the status on Facebook to see what Star Wars is up to. That kind of thing.
Well, I will hop in there and say that you guys are, I was 6 when it came out in '77,
Hmm.
and for me, that was that perfect. It just hit right. So
Yeah.
6 in '77, 9 in 1980 for Empire, 12 for Return of the Jedi. I hit that sucker hard, right?
Hmm.
It was my life, right? Outside of school and playing with kids, which mostly playing was with Star Wars figures and reading Star Wars comic books, I still had my time for Captain America and Batman. Still love my Saturday morning cartoons, but Star Wars was my thing. And you're right. The older I get, you, the love and the passion I have for Star Wars, it's still there, but it's in different things. And for me, the love and passion I have for the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy and Clone Wars and Rebels and those things you mentioned, Steve, has been replaced almost with a love and the passion I have for the guys I do the podcast with
Mm.
and the time we spend together and meeting friends like you guys and having good conversations. Just it's like going and playing cards with your buddies every Thursday night, poker night. I don't have that. I've got this. Going to the golf course and playing golf with your buddies every week. I don't have that. I've got this. And it's become a part of my life that way to where I can always lean back on that nostalgia and that love for that thing I grew up with. But now it's just a way to make friends and have camaraderie. And it's just a part of your life that way. So I think that's where my state is overall. I am not as hyped about certain things. I'm not as excited as I hoped I would be that Disney took over. I was. I was like, they got all this money, they got all these things, they can do great things. Well, we've got a mixed bag since then, but it's still there. The passion's still there on that end. Any rebuttals before I ask a follow up question or anything like that?
No, I mean, I think that because we are men of a certain age, I think nostalgia in general plays a huge part of how we choose to watch and what we choose to watch. And Star Wars is always going to scratch that nostalgic itch. Whatever Lucasfilm puts out, we'll want to watch it and give it a try just because it has the Star Wars name to it. And that's just kind of how we'll tackle that when it happens. So that's how I kind of feel about it. I mean, then if you can just get that moment of nostalgia, like Steve was mentioning with Skeleton Crew,
Mm-hmm.
if you can just like that moment, that dopamine hit of nostalgia when you're watching Skeleton Crew is neat. Acolyte didn't give me any of that though. And so it's a balance that they have to try and find where they're trying to appeal to maybe current fans and original trilogy fans at the same time. It's a difficult tightrope, I know, but they did such a great job with Skeleton Crew at finding that perfect nostalgic dopamine hit for us old fans.
You made an interesting distinction there.
Mm.
You said original trilogy fans versus current fans, and I think this is kind of my dilemma. I understand that there's always going to be for different people parts of everything that is Star Wars that they like more than another part of Star Wars. So, like, even if you just go to what we had for, you know, 20 years, 22 years, you had Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi, and everyone had their favorite movie of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone would tell you, I like the droids cartoon better than the Ewoks cartoon, or I don't like these, or I don't like the Ewoks movies, or I hate the Ewoks, or, everyone had their things that that they liked or they did not like, less than or more than the other things. But when the prequels come along, I hate the prequels. I only acknowledge the original trilogy. I only, um, I was shocked the first time I heard anyone tell me that they did not care for the original Thrawn trilogy, Heir to the Empire, Dark
Mm-hmm.
Force Rising, and The Last Command. I could not believe that such a person existed, um, because I remember reading those things
Mm-hmm.
and just being absolutely enthralled and swept away into the Star Wars galaxy again and loving every minute of it.
Right, right.
Um, but now but I guess what I'm saying is though that everything has to ride on the foundation of the original trilogy. And I don't think anyone's trying to do away with the original trilogy, but I do think there is a move sometimes to try to say, well, Luke Skywalker wasn't much of a hero, or this wasn't, this isn't really the truth, or this, they start to try to tear down the very thing that they're building on to try to make what they're building look better. And I have said, and when the Andor thing was happening, I was on some Facebook page of some Star Wars group, and it always seemed to come up in my feed. And someone was like, everyone's saying that Andor moves slow. 45 minutes, it's 45 minutes in Star Wars before they ever get anywhere. They're going, and I'm like, no, wait, hold on, time out. In the first 45 minutes of Star Wars, what do? We've got the whole opening chase scene with the Star Destroyer and the Rebel blockade runner. You've got that whole opening sequence with them. Vader's choking a guy out, for crying out loud, with his hands. You're being introduced to the droid. They're on a quest. The droids are on a quest. You've got the finding of Obi-Wan Kenobi. You've got the discovery of Luke. You've got all these. You're getting information that is pertinent to the rest of the film, and it is actually moving at a pretty good clip. The whole cantina thing is a big deal. That. And I said, and then when they blast off into the Death Star, it's just, it is now on. Like, it doesn't stop at that point. But everything seems to matter, and everything seems to move along in those 45 minutes. It does not. I've watched that movie, and I know that movie forwards and backwards, and I always think it's going to feel slow for a little bit, and it never does. And I think that's the thing about the original Star Wars that always blows my mind, is it never feels as slow as I think it should. Because I'm watching, I'm like, this is really. I'm always surprised by the fact that it doesn't feel slow. But I was like, why? But my overall point then was, why do you feel like you have to tear down the very thing on which all this is built to try to make what you like be something cool? And so I think that, and without meaning to, I think you kind of highlighted one of the issues I think that is in fandom today, Mike, is that there are people who say, well, I'm an original trilogy fan. Oh, well, I'm a fan of the current stuff. Oh, well, there would be no current stuff without the original trilogy. So we need to figure out if we're Star Wars fans or not. That
Right.
And,
so
and one of
that's
the
an interesting distinction that you made.
one of the things that comes off of that to me, and maybe I'm way out in left field on this one, but when I watch the original trilogy, there's a meaning in the fight. There's a reason and a meaning for the fight. When I watch the prequel trilogy, I see the base being built for that fight. I see the background leading into it. Watching Clone Wars, watching Rebels, I see where it's going and why there's a meaning to it. Why end of Return of the Jedi felt like something. And then, believe it or not, I did a rewatch of Andor recently. And as I'm watching Andor, I'm realizing that, yes, there's no Jedi. That's fine. We can talk about that later. Every now and then there's going to be a show without Jedi. But there's no Jedi in there. But outside of that, you see the gritty, hands getting dirty kind of people who are living in the Star Wars universe being a part of that that transformation into what happens at the end of Return of the Jedi. And so for me, all of that, from the prequels to those shows to the original trilogy, everything built to that moment when Luke becomes a Jedi, his father returns, as we've talked about before. Return of the Jedi could be Luke becoming that Jedi, or it could become his dad returning to being the Jedi he was. But then the rebels win and they take down the Empire. That's where we're going from there. What got me on everything sequel trilogy was it doesn't have the same meaning. All that meaning got scrapped away because the First Order is nothing more than, hey, we're just going to make the Empire again. We're just going to make it different this time. Hey, the rebels are still going to have to fight a battle just like they've been fighting since the end of Revenge of the Sith. And it takes down the value of what Luke Skywalker and what Cassian Andor and Jyn Erso and all the other people gave their lives for, or that put all their effort into it. It takes away all the value of that, in my opinion, in the sequel trilogy. I've said it on our show a lot. It could have done something besides the First Order. Anything. I don't care. Make some other alien species come in, whatever.
Bring the Yuzon Vong in.
Oh,
100%.
Lord. Oh, Lord.
You bring that in, and now that battle still has meaning in
Right.
all those original things. So
Right.
there I am, being an old man, yelling at kids on my lawn
Well,
again. But
you
that's
know,
what it is.
I think if you go to Andor, like I was one of those people, I did not enjoy Andor. I understood why people did. I enjoyed it more as it went along, you know, and I always appreciate a small group of people standing up against tyranny. So that last whole thing on whatever, here's my problem with Andor is I didn't know anyone's name. I could, you know, like they would say a name and it would immediately slip my mind because
Right.
everyone looked the same and everyone acted pretty much the same. You know, there wasn't enough differentiation in character and that sort of thing. But when it comes to the story, I'm like, okay, I get it, I dig it. It doesn't feel like Star Wars, and I don't care. It's not about the Jedi. It's about pace. It's about hope. You know, it's about spectacle. You know, that's Star Wars.
Hmm.
Um, and the idea of here's the burgeoning rebellion and everything, great story to be told. You want to get down and gritty with it, that's okay. I didn't feel like Star Wars, and I'm okay with it not feeling like Star Wars, especially once you got to the end,
Hmm.
because the end was the whole idea of it is time to stand up, it's time to quit being oppressed, and you do kind of get the political intrigue of everything that's going on that was not able to be seen unless you watch deleted scenes of Revenge of the Sith.
Hmm.
You know, and that's fine, that's great. But I'm really I think I'm looking forward to a season 2 of Andor because I think that some of those slow pacing issues are going to be worked out.
Oh yeah.
I like the idea of a movie a week, basically with 3
Hmm.
episodes being released every
Mhm.
week. And I like the idea of they're clipping off a couple of years at a time to get us up to Rogue One. I mean, like it wouldn't bother me at all if the last shot of Andor is him walking to meet that dude that he shoots.
And it will be. I bet it will be.
Yeah,
Gotta
I
be.
mean,
you know,
I think that the thing that they're doing right with Andor that for some reason doesn't seem to happen in other Disney Plus shows is that we can see the budget on the screen with Andor,
mhm.
but with like Acolyte and to some extent Skeleton Crew, we really couldn't see like the budget on the screen.
Yeah.
They're milking every technology, every practical sets, and everything that they can with Andor. I mean, I think I heard that the budget is more than it was for Rise of Skywalker, which
Wow.
is insane.
Hmm.
Now, I mean, that's 12 episodes of a show,
Yeah.
so we're getting like 3 different movies basically, so or 4 different movies, I guess. That's pretty cool. I mean, sure, if it's going to cost $250 million or whatever the final budget was, then give me 4 movies.
Mhm.
Now, I for one am always Star Wars needs to be on the big screen. You know, I'm tired, and I'm tired of the Disney Plus show. I think we need to get back into theaters. There needs to be another. I mean, The Force Awakens made what $2 billion worldwide. I think if done right, another Star Wars. Now, I don't know if Mando and Grogu is going to be that Star Wars movie that does 2 billion. I don't think we're going to get there because that has the prerequisite of having seen The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. And as much as we, as insulated Star Wars fans, think yes, everybody's obviously seen The Mandalorian. There's not truth to that. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people in Middle America that don't even stream TV. Still, they still use old satellite dishes to watch cable. Basically, I mean, so some people have not seen The Mandalorian. So
Which to me, and I think that I absolutely agree with you. I don't understand why Disney doesn't use the synergy of basically being tied in with ABC
right, yeah.
to
And I think they did that a little bit with Didn't they put a couple episodes of Mandalorian on ABC proper at some point, or at least the
I don't
Disney
know.
Channel? I want to say that they did that one time. If
I thought they did Andor one
yeah,
episode.
maybe something. Maybe it was Andor.
But
But
see, did they just do the one episode to try to get the
correct,
subscribers to come see? And that's where you
exactly.
got to say,
Yeah,
here's maybe re-edit them and do like an edit and be like, see the full, you know, see deleted scenes in the full episode,
Yeah.
but not take away from the story. Because here's the thing: the thing about Mandalorian is that when you watch that first episode of that first season, and you have this dude that looks like Boba Fett, that's not Boba Fett, that's cool. He's doing his thing. He's got his ship like he likes it. There's dialogue that's kind of funny. There's some tough stuff that's really gritty. And then he gets to the planet going after his one, the Grogu basically.
Right.
But we don't know that. The reveal at the end of that episode of Baby Yoda,
Yeah.
was just like,
It's amazing. It was amazing.
It was like, here when I saw that, I said, "Oh, they fixed everything."
Right.
They fixed everything. This is so because you had him fighting alongside an IG droid, and we'd never seen an IG droid fight that way, and we never seen an IG droid fight. We just seen him stand there next to Darth Vader, basically. IG-88. Everything else was done in comics and maybe cartoons. But here's this IG droid doing these cool things while he's flipping around doing stuff, and it at the end of it all, it was like, what a great way to have all this. I mean, think about it. In that first episode, you were having everyone was saying, "I have spoken, I have spoken, I have spoken, I have spoken." By the end of the whole thing, it's like, this is the way. This is the way. Like everyone,
Right.
this got into out there. Like for all the people that didn't watch it, it got out there. So
Yeah.
Grogu got out there. Baby Yoda
Yeah.
out there. And so to me, that shows a little bit of the level of success that show actually did have.
Mhm.
But then when you roll into that second season and you start to incorporate, was that Boba Fett? Boba Fett? Boba Fett.
Boba Fett.
And you start to bring in some of these elements of the other stuff that's going on. Ahsoka shows up. And then all of a sudden there's that, and I'm sorry, it's the greatest moment in Disney Star Wars is when that X-Wing shows up.
Oh yeah.
And they set it up so well because they showed the Mandalorian barely be able to beat one of those Dark Troopers
Mm-hmm.
and have to jettison. And so when all those Dark Troopers come back, they fly back to the ship and they're they're pounding and pounding to get in that. You're just like, all hope is lost. And I'm watching and I thought, this is about to be a cliffhanger. They're about to hold us out for season 3. And then that X-Wing shows up, and I thought it was Ahsoka, to be honest with you. I really thought, oh, Ahsoka showed up in an X-Wing. That's interesting. Or it's one of those X-Wing guys, and he's going to come in and be able to deactivate everything. I really did not. Everyone's like, oh, I knew it was Luke's X-Wing. I didn't. I'll tell you straight up, I didn't. And the music changed, and everything shifted, and then the elevator door opened, and there was a green lightsaber, and it was so well done because I wanted to in that moment say it's Luke, but I wasn't sure. I wasn't confident.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to just come right out and say it's Luke, until you see the actual lightsaber, and he's going through and he's just tearing through those things like they're nothing. After Mando had such a hard time, it was just the perfect setup. It was the Darth Vader and Rogue One moment for Luke that we wanted in the sequel trilogy. We wanted to see Luke at his full power and his full potential doing his thing, and we got to see it, and it should have been on a big screen. It should not have had to be on a television screen. But at the end of the day, they were doing it right. They did it so right. They did it well. And there's a lot that they've done well,
Yeah.
Look, I give Boba Fett a hard time, that book of Boba Fett. But at the end of the day, you had Boba Fett riding a Rancor down the street from Mos Eisley.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's not.
That's awesome. That's toy box stuff happening, And I agree with you. I think that it belongs on the big screen. I also think that Disney, in a race to get back their $4 billion, everything, I don't know that their business practices, Lucasfilm, on the Lucasfilm side of things, has been the best as far as, and this is one of those things that's been talked to death. We're announcing this, and then 3 months later, oh, we're not doing that anymore. We're doing this.
Sure.
And I know that probably every studio in the world has those kind of things happen, but they don't announce them
No, they
Mhm.
usually
They
don't.
wait until everything's locked and loaded for certain, and then they do it. And they definitely don't film like a whole little thing of the director walking out onto a runway to get
Right.
into an X-wing and fly off and say, "I'm so excited about this." No, she's
Right.
not doing it anymore. You know, they
Mhm.
don't, you know, and so I think there's been some poor things. I'm not a big fan of the story group and the way that's kind of been handled. But there's been a lot of bright spots, but I agree with you. I think that part of the issue is this small screen subscription model, Disney Plus stuff, and it's like,
Yeah.
make it an event. Star Wars is meant to be an event, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and the industry in general was reeling, I mean, from the pandemic. And so I try and give them a bit of a pass because everybody thought it was going to go to streaming. And for a while there during the pandemic, that's what it was. I mean, everybody was watching whatever streaming service they decided to have. Not many people were going back to the theaters, but in the end, the churn of subscribers, it's never going to be a moneymaker. There's Max does okay, you know, Amazon Prime does okay, but they fudge the numbers because they also have, you know, obviously their shopping business, and so they can fudge the numbers a little bit on how good they're doing with streaming. But I think for Star Wars, what needs to happen for it to be successful, it's got to be back on the big screen.
Has to be.
I don't know if Mando and Grogu is going to be the best thing to be the first thing to come out big screen, but I'm excited for it. I mean, I'll be there, of course, but we'll
Yeah.
see. I mean, we'll see.
I want to go with people to see
Yeah,
a Star Wars movie again.
yeah, yeah.
I
And
mean,
I'll
that's
look. I'm
fun.
going to go see Revenge of the Sith in April when it.
Yep.
I mean, I'll be there, but
And
you
why
know,
are they doing that in April?
Why not May?
I don't know.
Why not in May when it came out and do a proper thing? And listen, this whole thing, and they did it with Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And in the Phantom Menace, I never got to go see, but it's just like put these things in there for a few weeks at a time. Let them
yeah,
make you some money.
yeah.
You haven't spent a dime on promotion. Come up off about 1.5
Hmm.
and put some promotion out there and promote these things happening. Put together a cool trailer and get people in the theaters to see this thing and make some free money.
Right.
You
You
know,
are
like,
correct.
even if you only make $100 million over the
Yeah.
course of 6 weeks, what's it cost you?
Hmm.
You know, not much,
Not much at
not
all.
much.
No.
You've just put $90 million in your pocket. You know, I just don't understand the lack of willingness, and that's where I think that and maybe look, I don't know. I'm not an executive. I'm not a studio guy. I don't know how it works, but I think that sometimes you just look at things, and I live in a real world where you utilize common sense, and it's like, can we make money on Revenge of the Sith? Sure, we can. How much production costs we got? Oh, nothing. You know, really? We don't. It's a Star Wars movie. We're not paying to make. No, it's been made. We're putting it back out in theaters. Are we tweaking it on? No. Why would we? It was made.
Right.
It was shot digitally. It was put out there digitally. We can put it in. Oh, okay. Well, let's throw it out there. How much is going to cost us to get a trailer made for this thing? You know what? We probably need to throw maybe $2 to $3 million
Sure. Sure.
at some advertisement. Okay. So $3 million is our budget. Sure, let's do a $3 million budget advertising. How many people you think I get? Well, the Star Wars fans will definitely be there.
Right.
Sure, there's word of mouth that it's a fun event. You know how stuff on the internet goes.
Hmm.
People will show up just because they want to put it on their TikTok. They're checking out Star Wars gang.
Right.
Okay. Hey, by the way, it's been about 6 weeks. That movie came out. We put it out there, right? Yeah, we sure did, boss. What did it do? We only made about 150 million. I'm sorry, 150 million in 6 weeks. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's kind of a flop, isn't it? Well, considering we didn't pay a dime to make it. Return of the Jedi, when they showed Return of the Jedi on the big screen,
Yeah.
like 55 million in
It did well. It did
Yeah.
really well. And
One weekend, right?
yeah,
Or
and
1
Phantom
week.
Menace did well too. I mean, these re-releases have been doing well. So
But
April is a weird time.
What they want to do is they want to be able to put out The Force Awakens for the 10th anniversary of The Force Awakens, and
Yep.
you know, and
Yeah.
say because it made $2 billion. No other
Right.
Star Wars movie made $1 billion. You know, well,
Mhm.
screw you.
Alfie says it all the time. You would think that man, if they just had their own network, or if they had their own streaming service, or if they had their own affiliation with one of the big three channels, there would be commercials out about things like
Yeah.
this. They'd promote it to the actual it's
Hmm.
on Disney Plus or Disney Junior or the Disney Channel, who are on cable. And then, oh, in the
Right.
streaming service, every time you go to start something, there should be, hey, you went and saw Revenge of the Sith in theaters. Now take your son or
Hmm.
daughter to go see that, right?
Hmm.
On the big screen.
Yep.
Remember that, how much you loved it? Have them have the same emotion and see that again, right? How easy is that? It's not that
Yeah.
hard at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
It's
while we're complaining about things, um, let me just say, Hasbro, this retro collection thing you've got is a great idea, especially now that you're making figures that were never made in the original Kenner line.
right.
But why are we putting them in a box of 6 and making them a Target exclusive? Let's get these things swinging on some pegs. Let's get them out into. And I know Target has done this. I understand. We got it. Target want butts and seats. They want people there. Well, how about give them an exclusive retro figure that has already been done in the Kenner line and say the Target exclusive is here, but it's got new guns or it's got something so that you go get it. And then let Amazon have these things. Let other people have these
Right.
things. You will sell them, especially with the figures that have never been made. But no, we want to make it so limited and so hard to get and so expensive that no matter how much you love Star Wars and no matter how excited you are to see these things, you'll probably never get them.
Well, speaking of Hasbro, this
Yeah.
was a topic I brought up to Adam and Steve. Or dang it,
I'm
what?
not. I'm not Steve Glosson.
Gosh, I trip over myself every time. You know, just a while back, I'm not even going to get political on it. I'm just going to say there was a news announcement.
I think you're getting political.
Hasbro mentioned they wanted to increase their costs. They wanted to increase their prices 25% due to some tariffs.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
understand, but why
Yeah.
did they increase them 50 and 100% before the tariffs? I mean, why is it that a 3 3/4 figure went from being $9 to $17 before the tariffs ever
It's
came
been
along?
that way for it's been that way. The prices
Well,
have been increasing on all of those type
I
of things already.
I heard Scott Toy Guru Knightlick, who is a collector, and I'm in the toy industry. He always wants to inform us of how things are, and that's fine. I'm glad, but it's like, hey man, take a side. Are you happy about this? Are you aggravated about this? Is there a fix to this? You know, don't just say
Right.
this. But he mentioned that things like Star Wars and Marvel Legends, that there's not action figures don't have a very high profit margin. And he wouldn't say what the profit margin is. I would like to know what the profit margin is. Because
Mhm.
if I'm a company who is producing these things and there's not a high profit margin and I think I can get a higher profit margin over here, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop putting effort and time into something that doesn't have a very high profit margin.
mm-hmm.
Here's what I know. I know that that there is a cost to the retailer, and I know that then the MSRP is what the retailer will charge so as to make a profit on what they've cost. And I also know that I'm looking at a Marvel Legends action figure right now on Amazon.com that was originally $25 and they cannot sell it. It's been marked down to $11.
Yeah, you just got to wait
And
a
so
month.
and so I
Yeah.
know that they want to get rid of old stock. I get
Mm-hmm.
that, and I get that
Mhm.
at some point you'll take that loss to get rid of the old stock. But at another point, I have to say there's got to be some profit margin to this.
Yeah.
They're pouring money into live streams and fan streams that are all for adult collectors.
Mhm.
And so I don't understand the thing about it is like I understand inflation, I understand prices going up. I get all that. But I also understand that their price changes have been very arbitrary. Like there's no rhyme or reason to the
Mhm.
things that have been done.
Yeah.
And and one of the things that the CEO of Hasbro said is we've done a lot of things to cut costs so that we can keep the cost at this level. So that we've done a lot of things to make it so that we can stay at $25 for Marvel Legends. Okay, great. Well, then why is this other Marvel Legends figure over here $45 because it's a little bit bigger and has one hand with it? You know, like is
Right.
it why am I paying 50 why am I paying $50 for this 2-pack, but I'm also paying $50 for this 1-pack? And I don't mean the Spider-Man Maximum thing that's coming out. I just it's just so arbitrary. Why am I paying? You know, and then the problem is the quality is not great. And I don't mean paint apps and stuff like that. Hasbro did what's called the Super Adaptoid. The Super Adaptoid is a villain, kind of he's an android from the Avengers, and basically his whole shtick was, as an android, he adapted whatever powers were used against him, and he could now use those. So he's like an amalgamation of Captain America, and he's supposed to have wings like the Wasp. He's got Hawkeye bow and arrow abilities. You know, he's got all repulsor rays and stuff like Iron Man. And he's big, he's tall, and so they did a figure of him a few years back, all green, you know, with different shades of green. Everything comes with Cap's shield, Thor's hammer. Not that he can grip Thor's hammer, and not that the way the shield is made, you can actually put it on his hands very safely. But he was a remake. He was just a retooling a little bit of a 12-inch Marvel Legends Captain America they did for the MCU stuff, and they charged $90 for this thing. And so I never picked him up. But I tell you, when I did pick him up is when he was at Ollie's for 20.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you what, I wasted $20.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, so this is the kind of stuff you're willing to put out poor quality figures without much thought going into them, and you're charging $90. Like, if I'd have paid $90 for that, I would have been embarrassed and angry. Like, I would not have been happy at all. And so when it comes, and I can't speak to the Star Wars license much because I just can't. I'm also at a point where I don't really collect much new anyway. I just can't afford to. You know?
I'm the same way. I don't really collect much anymore.
But I will pick up a few things. But here's the kind of stuff that gets me excited these days. I didn't realize this was happening, but back in the 80s, there was a very obscure toy line, and I can't remember who did it, but it was called RoboForce. These little things looked like Daleks, basically, from Doctor Who.
Yep.
They had a suction cup base, and then they were just kind of weird cones. They had different little accoutrements on them and different paint schemes and everything, different little heads, but there weren't much to them. You know, they really, and so I'd forgotten all about RoboForce until I saw one at an antique mall one day, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I wonder, you know, I remember.
You're listening to Rule the Galaxy podcast. I'm Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dulon, Star Wars Rebels. May the Force be with you always.
$30 to kind of play with it and see if it's a line that I'd be interested in if they move forward with it. They only had 2 in the first wave, and a Walmart exclusive that's just a repaint of this guy that I'm not going to pick that up. You know, and I see that they're doing another wave at Toy Fair. They showed off this, and they're incredibly imaginative and really cool, you know, and it's the reimagining of this old 80s toy line. And I just look and I'm like, meanwhile, Hasbro's, you know, $30 will get you a
Right. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and I hate to be that guy. I mean, but it's like there's something there's a disparate nature of the companies and the pricing that I don't understand. I don't understand how Nacelle can get away with a lower run. They have to be a lower run of toys than a Marvel Legends wave, and charge $30 for that. But
Right.
you know, $25 is going to get me less than half of the plastic of that toy from Marvel Legends. And I know you've got like licensing issues and everything, but it can't be that much. It can't make that much of a difference. You know, same thing with Lucasfilm. I don't know. It is legendary, the licensing deal that George Lucas got.
Right. Right.
And I don't know if Lucasfilm was able to hold on to that in perpetuity.
Probably not.
Well, I'll tell you, Daryl DePriest from Hasbro. I saw him at a celebration. I think it might have been Celebration 3, and he was talking about it. You know, and he's like, "Well, we still got, you know." Because if you're Lucasfilm, why are you gonna alter the deal?
Right.
You know.
Yeah, and I wonder if, like, when Disney bought them, though, Disney's pretty big. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like I was very surprised that they kept up with Hasbro, in all honesty, because Disney makes their own figures.
That's what I was going to say. Doesn't Disney have their own line that they
They
could
do.
bring in and not have to pay a licensing fee or not have to?
100% do. I mean, I don't, and I was very surprised they kept up with Hasbro, in all honesty.
Yeah, but if Disney does it, it'll only be at the parks or Disney Springs,
Sure.
and it'll cost you, $50 for a
Right.
3.25-inch action figure that has 2 points of articulation.
Don't
Man, those die-cast ones that they had when The
Mhm.
Force Awakens came out were
Mhm.
pretty cool looking figures.
Yeah.
I mean, so they have the ability, if they wanted to make some cool looking stuff. But yeah, they usually try and do it on the cheap.
I also heard today, and this is from Bobby Valla, who does the Valaverse stuff, which is the Action Force, kind of like a G.I. Joe kind of, not, I don't want to use knockoff, but inspired line. He used to work at Hasbro, and he talked about with Hasbro, like if you're doing an MCU figure with Hasbro, you have to get approval from. So if you're doing a Tony Stark figure from the MCU, you have to get Robert Downey Jr. to sign off on his likeness.
Really?
But with Star Wars, Lucasfilm owned the likenesses.
Right.
And so Lucasfilm signs off on the likeness. So if they think, yeah, that looks like Harrison Ford, that's fine. They get to sign off. That looks like Han Solo. That looks like
That's good enough. We don't.
yeah, that's literally. So Carrie Fisher wasn't too far off when she said, every time I look in the mirror, I owe George a quarter.
That was a good line.
Well, as Michael knows, we always go into toy talk here for a little while.
Right,
on Rule of
yeah.
Galaxy.
Yep.
I'm going to bring something back to Deucecast and
Wow.
talk
Yeah.
let's talk a little movies here. Let's
Ooh.
Yeah.
it's something that recently my friend Mass and Tom, who are big, they're listeners of the Rule of the Galaxy, and they've been on every now and then. Mass was one of our original hosts on Rule of the Galaxy. We've been really making an effort to go see movies like once a month at least together.
Wow.
And talk about them, and sometimes we go off and do a sideshow from Rule of the Galaxy and talk a little bit about a movie we've seen or we're going to see. We haven't really talked about Captain 4 yet. Cap 4.
Yeah.
I'll just say real quick, I was underwhelmed.
Yeah.
It was okay, but I was
underwhelmed.
underwhelmed.
Yeah. A lot of missed opportunities.
Yeah.
Should have had the Green Hulk in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a lot of missed opportunities.
But let's see if we can talk something positive, because I feel like, my show, I always feel like I'm bringing everybody down. I want to be upbeat. I want to be positive.
No, that's my fault. I've become.
That's Steve's fault.
Remember, I used to be positive about everything.
Well, yeah. What was your logo back in there?
Safe place to geek out.
Safe place to geek out.
Not anymore, pal.
Yeah,
Not
for
anymore.
real.
Well, let's just go with some of the big hitters that are coming up this year.
Yeah.
I'll throw these out and see if you guys want to talk about any of the three.
Mm-hmm.
Thunderbolts, Superman, Fantastic Four.
I personally am excited about every single one of them.
Me too.
Now, my background is quite different than Steve's in the sense that I am not like a comic book guy.
Mhm.
I just did not read many comic books growing up. If it was Star Wars, I read it, but that was about it. I wasn't a Marvel or DC guy, so I don't have that background. So theatrical stuff is my only background when it comes to anything Marvel. So when they cast the new Fantastic Four, my whole outlook is look at the skill of the individuals that they're casting. And the skill of those four individuals that they're casting is through the roof as far as talent is concerned. And so I'm very excited about the potential, just based upon their talent alone, of what could be with Fantastic Four. I think that movie, where the MCU is right now, that movie has to hit. That movie has to hit big. And because they're going to want to use those characters for the continuing Doomsday Saga, for Secret War. I mean, those are going to be some major characters that they need to be big. And based on talent alone, I think they've done a great job casting it. Thunderbolts looks really fun. If you're a movie person and you saw that most recent trailer that they dropped, which they're calling the A24 trailer. A24, if you're not familiar, is not an indie movie studio, but they have a lot of different types of films that they release that are more on the indie vibe. but that trailer they released got a lot of people hyped just because it was done in a very A24 way, intentionally, obviously, for marketing purposes. And so I'm just excited about that cast too. I think it's fun. I like those characters, even though some of them were from Disney Plus shows. I still think that Elena, Florence Pugh, is one of the best actresses around right now. So again, if you're just basing it on talent alone, and David Harbour looks like he's having so much fun in that movie. And if I can feel that when I'm watching him on the screen, that's going to make me have fun too. And so I'm excited for all of it. Superman, I don't know much about David Cornsweet. I've only seen him in a couple things. He was actually in the few scenes that he was in Twisters, he has a magnetism on screen that I can see that will translate well into Superman. And as far as Nicholas Hoult as Lex, he's a very talented actor. So I think it could work. So it's all just going to be, is James Gunn going to be pulled back just a little bit? Like, don't go Guardians of the Galaxy with it. We don't need that. James Gunn is an amazing director, but he just needs to be pulled back just a little bit. I don't want him to go too far into the Gunnisms with Superman. So that's kind of my take. I'm excited about all three of them.
Did James Gunn did the second Suicide Squad, right?
He did, yeah.
Into the Peacemaker stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember much about that movie outside of Starro, which is the big giant starfish.
Right.
And here's the thing: it takes someone with James Gunn's, and I think maybe he was emboldened by how well Guardians did. I mean, James Gunn gave us Groot and Rocket Raccoon on screen, believably and lovingly. Like, people loved Groot when it was all said and done. People loved Rocket when it was all said and done. The whole of Guardians 3 revolved around Rocket Raccoon, you know, and made us. I hated that movie the first time I saw it because I just sat there in terror that we're going to have to watch Rocket die. I really did. I thought he's going to die, you know, or Peter's going to die. What James Gunn did with that trilogy was just something really special, with characters that were some of the most obscure characters as it comes to the common person knowing, the common fan knowing them. So with Superman, you know, knowing that he was bold enough to bring something to life like Starro, we've seen the giant monster in the streets of Metropolis, you know.
That's right.
I have a lot of hope that Superman's going to turn out okay, that's going to be a good movie.
Yeah.
Thunderbolts, I'm taking this in the reverse.
Yeah.
You did. However you want.
Thunderbolts is kind of the Suicide. They're doing it like the Suicide Squad of the Marvel Universe with it.
Right.
What was so great about Thunderbolts originally in the comics is you're reading this. All of the heroes were gone except for the mutants because of a whole event that took place. You know, and so at that time you're in a situation where the Fantastic Four, the Avengers were no more on Earth. And the Thunderbolts were this team of superheroes who stepped in to fill the void. And you go through this first issue with the Thunderbolts, and they're working together. They're stopping the threats. They're gaining the trust of everyone, you know, and everyone's excited about the Thunderbolts. And then they go back to where they all meet up, and the last page is the reveal that it is a team called the Masters of Evil, led by Baron Zemo, who have all taken on new personas to get access to like government codes and government secrets and everything, so that they can basically take over the world. And what happens in the following 12 issues is you have some people who are trying to continue to manipulate and push this agenda, and you have some of these heroes who were second tier, you know, B tier villains who are doing well, and they find that they enjoy being the good guy. You know, they're basically being reformed as they are doing good. And so you end up with some neat conflicts. And then when the Avengers come back, you've got the Avengers versus the Thunderbolts. You've got Hawkeye taking over the Thunderbolts with these characters that wanted to be reformed, you know, because, you know, he's like, you know, I know what it's like to be on the wrong side of the law, because he was on the wrong side of the law in the comics at first. And he's like, and to be given a chance. So I want to give you guys this chance, that sort of thing. So and then later on, it became this kind of Suicide Squad thing, with Red Hulk and I forget who all was in it. But so this is basically kind of an amalgam of all of that, because you've basically got the villains from these former movies.
Hmm.
Red Guardian is not necessarily a hero; he's a hero
Right.
of Russia. Winter Soldier, Bucky was Winter Soldier for crying out loud.
Hmm.
Black Widow, or Florence Pugh, her character, was the bad guy, for crying out loud for a little bit.
Hmm.
So you've got U.S. Agent,
Yeah.
and so you've got these guys that are riding this kind of fine line, except for Bucky. Bucky at this point is full on good guy.
Right.
And everything. I think that given the threat that they're going to be facing, which is a Avengers level threat, they need a Hulk. They need
Hmm.
someone that's not them, that they're not going to have to be able to fight this threat. I think it has potential to be just a really fun, great, movie that I given the level of the threat, I really do hope this is the catalyst for the return of some other
Yeah.
more super type people. And then when you get to Fantastic Four, that's my jam.
Mm.
Fantastic Four are my jam. There's nothing that I've seen about the movie that I don't like. The concept is one that I'm having to settle with. Like
Mm.
I would rather us have a Fantastic Four in our universe that's doing our thing. But if this is what we're getting, this is what we're getting. That's fine. I have two things that I don't really care for what they're doing. One is the female Silver Surfer. This is one of those things where they found an obscure alternate universe in the comics that they could actually say this is who this is. And I'm not looking forward to all of the hot takes by people who've been fans of this character ever since she first made her debut in Universe X in 1998.
Right. Right.
Drawn by Alex Ross, the beautiful Alex Ross covers. I don't want to hear people who act like they've known this all along. Um, and then the other thing is the Thing's voice. I know what's the guy's name who's playing him?
Eben Mossbackrack.
Yeah, I know that he probably doesn't want to have to do a voice to be the Thing or whatever.
Right. Right.
But if we can get Sonic the Hedgehog's teeth changed, can't we get a proper Thing voice? It's clobbering time.
Yeah, it's
kind of
clobbering
thing.
time. Yeah,
But
exactly.
but I think he looks great. Like that's the one
That
thing
design was cool. Yeah.
I think he looks absolutely outstanding. And until he moves a little bit, like there's a little bit of the uncanny valley, but until he moves just a little bit, he looks like he's absolutely right there,
Hmm.
and not so. I'm gonna be there for a Fantastic Four movie. I I'm I liked all but one of the ones that have been released so far, to the public, and even let me say I've liked all but one of the ones that have been made. Because the Fantastic Four movie that was never released is actually a fun
I've got a copy of it, and it's good.
piece of 90. If they had a budget to do better effects and a little bit less melodrama from Doctor Doom, you're talking about a movie that I'd be celebrating to this day.
Yeah.
As I can't believe they did this. Um, the Tim Story Fantastic Four movies, when you look at the time period in which they were released in the early 2000s, I
Yeah,
mean,
this is true.
it's what it was.
Yeah.
It was you were hitting and
Hmm.
missing, and that one kind of yeah. The first one I would say was maybe a single. They got on base with it, but it wasn't a home run.
Hmm.
And the second one was a double or a triple because they got the Silver Surfer so right. They
Yeah.
got Doom's motivations just right. You had a team that was together and working together, and there was some humor and stuff. But I would like them both just fine. Now, Fanforstic, I have watched it, and it is not good.
Yeah, it's not great. It's
And but so I'm looking forward to this. I wish I would love to get a Fantastic Four like the one that I know and love from the comics on the big screen at some point. And I will never see it in my lifetime, and I'm okay with that. I just as I think I don't know that I've ever really gotten. I think I said this before. I've never really seen on the big screen a Spider-Man that I recognize from the comics. That they always take bits and pieces of his personality from the comics and kind of emphasize one or two of those things. You know, Toby was great, Andrew Garfield was great, Tom Holland's great, all for different reasons. You know, but yeah, so I guess I'm looking forward to all of them, and I'll be there for all of them. Here's the thing about Cap 4. I enjoyed it. I didn't. There was
Yeah.
nothing. My thing is like nothing bad, nothing offensive, nothing, you know, that makes me angry. Except for, and I wasn't angry about it, except for it was an Incredible Hulk sequel. It was a
Yeah.
sequel to a movie that everyone says nobody liked, but when people go back and rewatch it, they're like, "This is actually pretty good."
Mhm.
And you really needed at some point. I don't have a problem with Sam putting up a fight against the Red Hulk. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, this is a guy we watched turn sideways and cut off the wings of fighter jets, for crying out loud, with his wings. So I don't have a problem with that. I just kept expecting this Green Fist to come in,
Mm.
you know,
Mhm.
and get to see a little bit of a fight between Ross and Banner. Oh well, we didn't.
Yeah.
You
Oh
know.
well, we did.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it was a bad movie. I just anything related to Cap, I'm really excited about,
absolutely.
and I just felt like it didn't like I wanted it to be a 9 out of
Yeah.
10,
Yeah.
and it was
Mm.
more like a 7 out of
Yeah.
10.
Yeah, I
You
would
know?
say that's a pretty fair thing. Here's the thing though with that kind of stuff is you're also dealing with movies that have all come out after what Marvel Studios did from 2008 until
Yep.
2019 is just unheard of. And everyone's tried to recreate it and they just can't. And even Marvel in its own way, even Marvel Studios in their own way have tried to recreate what they did and they're just not able to. And
Yeah.
so everything lives in the shadow of Chris Evans, Chris
Yes.
Hemsworth, Robert Downey Jr. You know, everything lives in the shadow of that rather than being able to build upon it. And so everything, and so it's going to take something. And so I agree with you, Nip. It's going to take Fantastic Four is the linchpin,
Yeah.
and what happens with Fantastic Four, I think, dictates how things will be moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think that it's an ingenious casting to have RDJ as Doom. I mean, I think that there can be some really unique storytelling opportunities with that.
Yeah, yeah. It seems a little desperate. It seems a little desperation
Well,
casting.
I mean, yeah, they're at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Well,
kind of had to,
when
you
he
know,
stepped out and took that mask off, like I think I talked to you guys about this. I was like, yeah,
yeah. It's like that meme where you have the girl that's excited and
Yeah.
then she's like, huh, so
Yeah.
wait a minute.
and so I'm like, wow. So internally they know there's problems. You know
Well,
that.
sure. I mean, yeah, they know that the most recent phase was not as successful. I mean,
Yeah.
it's obvious it wasn't.
Yeah.
And so if there is if they've cracked the story, as the Russos like to say,
Yeah.
and RDJ is the linchpin of that, I think that there's some really unique things that they could do between him and Spider-Man. Just, you know, Spider-Man thinking that he's looking into the eyes of Tony Stark when he's not.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some just really
Mm.
interesting things they could do there. We're talking about the need of a home run, and they need one. They need that Doom to be a home run.
Both of these companies are needing
Yeah,
a home run in the worst
yeah.
way at the movie theater.
Yeah, they really do. And I mean, as much as the rumors that are out there of what's going to come after Mando and Grogu, is it going to be are they going to
Mm.
go with the hot hand of Sean Levy? Is it going to be his movie that's next? Are they going to go with the hot hand of James Mangold? Is it going to be his movie that's next? Or are they going to do more Ray? We just don't know. I mean, and there's Ray is in such development hell
Yeah.
right now that who knows where that's going to if that's going to come out. Sean Levy, he's able to get a movie made. I believe that he can get one made before the Ray film.
And I think we all listen to RFR. I think RFR is the ones who've said that don't be surprised if you know the next movie out is a Sean Levy, especially
Mhm.
that's one tied in with Gosling, right?
Yeah, right.
Because
The rumors,
they
yeah.
they
Mhm.
they want to have that big star, which currently he is, as big as you can get.
Sure.
Him mixed with Rey post Rise of Skywalker is what I'm hearing. They feel like that could be a home run. I don't know if that's a home run or not, but hey, Levy has a good track record right now.
You need to have somebody that big paired with Daisy Ridley. You can't have a Daisy Ridley movie with just her as the big star of the film.
Correct.
She's not there yet in her career in general, and that character is not beloved enough for that movie to work. You have to have somebody like a Ryan Gosling paired with her, and then you're going to get butts and seats. I mean, that's just, that'll work.
From the general audience, as you mean?
Correct.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
all
yeah.
I'm talking. And they have to get to 2 billion worldwide.
Yeah.
That's a general audience extravagant. You have to be able to put some stars on the screen with your new folks.
Are we tapering off on the everything is awesome, everything's exciting, everything is the biggest deal ever and I mean from the internet reaction, from the audience, because I think that's one of the things that's really worn me out is I can't be over the top excited about everything.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, I think that the expectations from fandom in general are too high in regards to everything.
Yeah.
I think fandom has this unreachable expectation for every single genre film that comes out, whether it be MCU, whether it be DC, whether it be Star Wars. The expectations have just gotten too high. I mean, and now I don't know how you taper that, though. I don't know how you.
Well, but there's also this thing of it's twofold. There's one thing where it's like my expectations are high, and because my expectations were high, I cannot be disappointed in what I've consumed.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
My,
Yeah.
my enjoyment, I cannot let anyone, and if I am, no one must know. This must be my favorite thing of all time.
Right, I see what
This
you're
must be the
saying.
most important. And the other
Right.
thing is that if someone does not like this thing that I have enjoyed, that person is evil. Or if someone likes this thing that I did not enjoy, that person must be stupid. And that's one of the things that I really like, Joe, about you guys' show is I've never felt like I can't come on your show and voice an honest opinion, and I don't fear you guys giving me backlash or even getting major backlash, because you guys have established yourself as being able to have just civil conversations about this stuff. Because again, the money I've spent on Star Wars is not money that was made it was not money spent to be made back.
Right.
I haven't spent an ounce of creative juice on Star Wars. I've been a consumer of Star Wars my entire life, so I have no skin in the game as far as personal stakes go, and so I'm able to. I am disappointed, and there is a pang of sadness in my heart that Star Wars has become what it has become, as far as just diluted with so many shows and so many things. I remember in the 90s, back in the 1900s, when Star Wars novels were kind of starting to be a thing again, and you were getting the Dark Horse comics and stuff. I always would go like to Walden Books or somewhere. Kids, Walden Books was a bookstore in a mall. And malls were these big buildings that had just a plethora of stores, sometimes 2 levels worth of just.
Yeah, watch Stranger Things. You'll know what we're talking about.
But I would go to Walden Books, and there on the sci-fi section would be these shelves, 5 or 6 shelves high of Star Trek books. And then this one little shelf of like 5 or 6 Star Wars books. And I always thought, this is what makes Star Wars so much better than Star Trek, is it's special. Every time a book comes out, it's special. Every time something's released, it means something. It matters. That stopped quick.
It did.
And I remember when in '99 when the prequels hit, I actually stopped reading the expanded universe after the Yuuzhan Vong thing was over.
Right, me too.
Not because I wasn't enjoying it necessarily, but because now I had Star Wars on the big screen again.
Yeah, there was just so much, too many books too.
So much coming on. Yeah, there was so much going on, and so I would dip in and out, here and there, just to kind of see what's going on. But and kind of, once the internet comes along, you can keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening. But I had the movies again, and I realized this is where I really like my Star Wars is on the big screen, and I think that's kind of happened a little bit when it comes to the medium of television and movies. I think we've gotten a little bit saturated. with Star Wars, and the brands become a little bit diluted. And I know that when you're a company like Disney, you can't take the time off to give it a break and let it breathe. But I think you need to,
I look at it, and Alfie said it all along. George Lucas always wanted to not be what Disney is, right? He didn't be this mega huge corporate level where 35 people have to make a decision before you make a decision. He wanted to go, yeah, I like it, or no, I don't, or hey, I like this. What do you think? And boom, pull the cord and go, right? That's what he wanted to be able to do. And he wanted to be able to make the movie he wanted to make, not, well, we've got to run this through X amount of screen tests, and we've got to have these people sign off on it and all that kind of stuff. So I think, again, now people say all the time, sometimes we've become the one thing we didn't want to become with Star Wars.
Animal Farm.
What's that?
Animal Farm.
Okay.
The pigs become the humans.
There we go. But I'll go back to your comments on the books and the comics and the things like that. I'm a big believer that Star Wars is that big tentpole event, big movies. I don't need them to be every year. Give them to me every 2 or 3 years. That's fine. Make them good, make them meaningful, make them worth something. And then I'm okay with, hey, Disney or Disney Plus or however you want to do it, give me an animated series to fill some of the gap. I'm okay with that. And oh, by the way, you want to throw in a novel here or there that adds to the story? Great. But I don't need a novel every month, and I don't need a new streaming show every 3 months or whatever. I'm okay with less is more. Just give it good quality and make me want more of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Totally agree. Yep.
And it's been the same thing on the Marvel side of things too.
Right.
Let me ask you guys this. Recently, Rick McCallum kind of came out in an interview and released some information, or someone saw something and released some information about the Underworld series that George Lucas had said, we've got all these scripts, and I remember, I think that was when the term "on the shelf," they're on the shelf, came about, and we've gotten a little bit of a more of a detailed kind of thing. I don't know that there was anything really new that was said about them. The cost would have been extremely high. It was going to be a little more gritty and that sort of thing. I think there was something said about the Emperor being made a little more sympathetic, I guess, but nothing that we didn't really already know. But I'm wondering, do you guys think that obviously this is Rick McCallum, who's retired now and not necessarily part of things at all. Do you think Disney's going to tap into some of these things, like some of these movies that are on the way down, or do you think it's just
I hope not. I don't need, at least me personally, I love Andor. I think the themes of Andor and the more gritty, down to earth aspects of Andor are great. But I don't need more of that. I don't need 40 to 50 more episodes of an underworld where they try and make it HBO. That was the talk back then. They wanted to try and sell to HBO. They were real close to a deal, and there was some scandal that happened with the executive that they were working with, and so the deal never happened. And so I'm glad that those never came to the light of day, in all honesty.
Well, I mean, I was never real thrilled about the idea of a Star Wars underworld, but I don't know. I think with the George Lucas hand to it, it would be, I think you're going to deal in the world of the Hutts. I think you're going to deal in the world of bounty hunters and that sort of thing and other criminal. And I was kind of like, maybe we'll get a little Zuckus, maybe we'll get a little Forlom, maybe we'll get a little, get a little some of this stuff. And
you mean 4LOM?
Or however you want to say it. Whatever flavor you are with that. But I just wonder if maybe there's something in those things that they may take.
Yeah, sure, they could tap into stories of that.
I think it's an interesting.
And who's to say that they haven't? We don't really know.
Right.
We don't really, because Disney owns those scripts. They could have. I mean, Filoni could have been there tinkering around and pulling stuff out of those, and we wouldn't know.
And that's where I wonder if, like Mandalorian, some of the ideas of the bounty hunting and that sort of thing, and some of the stuff,
all the terms,
right?
That all could be from those scripts. Absolutely. I mean, because look, Ronald D. Moore, he's a good screenwriter. I mean, he has done some of my favorite shows, Battlestar Galactica, the new one, and I know Rifen hates it, but I love that new Battlestar.
Listen, it took away all the fun and excitement and joy of this thing. And now we're playing all along the watchtower. That's how you know someone's a Cylon.
I love that. That's one of the best sci-fi shows ever. By the way,
Can I tell you
But,
this? That like when I watched that, I tried to watch it in its first airing, like on
Yeah.
Sci-Fi or whatever, and I just kind of fell out.
Yeah.
And so once the season was out, and I was able to kind of get it through Netflix or whatever and watch the whole thing, I was checking out. Like
Really?
I was like, okay, it's just always something. It's always something. And then all of a sudden when they said we're using all, spoiler alert,
Right.
when they start using all along the watchtower, I'm like, oh, I'm in. I mean, that's what got me in.
Right. The
Was using
piano.
all along the watchtower.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm in this thing now. What does this even mean?
Right.
And
Right.
I don't like an ambiguous ending at all, and so I didn't appreciate the Starbucks stuff.
Yeah, the thing that I love about Ronald D. Moore's stuff that he said recently, he was on Katie Sackhoff's show, and he said some interesting comments recently about how it was just amazing for him to be in the same room with Lucas talking Star Wars.
Yeah.
He even joked around that he got to argue with Lucas a little bit about Star Wars. Darth Vader wouldn't have done that, or something like along those lines. And he said that. And other names have never really come out, but he said the group of writers that they had working on that show were very talented people. And so maybe they would have been great. I just don't know at that time. Say HBO had taken that show, and that's what the next Star Wars thing was after the prequel trilogies. I just don't know. I don't know.
I guess the thing too is what constitutes gritty and dark to George Lucas.
Sure, who knows?
Revenge of the Sith.
It depends on if he's in the middle of a divorce or not, I guess.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, are we pulling people's hearts out of their chest? Are we like? I don't think you would have gone Game of Thrones dark and gritty.
Probably not. Probably not. No.
But to know that you had someone like, and look, I'll say this: regardless of my feelings on the Battlestar Galactica stuff, it was a very well written show.
Yeah,
and you can't deny that. Like I've even thought about revisiting it lately, and I just can't bring myself to do it.
It's a good rewatch.
Every now and then I'll throw an episode on. It's good watching, and there's good actors. I did enjoy it. I didn't jump in on it the first time through either.
No, I wasn't first timer either. I waited for a while and watched it all in one sitting at one point. So yeah.
So you brought up Underworld. You and Steve, you mentioned earlier the way the Thrawn trilogy and the Zahn/Thrawn trilogy kind of lit a spark, right, to the Star Wars community. One of my favorite characters, and a lot of people's one of their favorite characters, Miss Mara Jade. And now, since Disney has been involved, they've released, I believe, 2 Black Series Mara Jades. And now Disney at the park is releasing a Mara Jade lightsaber set.
Yeah.
Do you guys think they're doing anything, or are they just saying, "Hey, we know these suckers will buy anything we throw at them and make some easy money," which we've already said they're not doing that in other ways. But
let me ask you, Joey, why Mara Jade? What is it about her that you dig on?
He loves a ginger.
Well, possibly that, but I mean, no. My wife's a lovely, sometimes brown hair, sometimes blonde hair lady. I've never been chasing the gingers, but I found the story intriguing that Zahn could wrap her into that trilogy and the way she changed from the beginning to the end. And then when they fed it into the longer stories, into the Yuzong Bong and the other, was it Legacy of the Jedi or whatever, I can't remember. There was another Jedi series after that. I found those stories intriguing. And look, when I was growing up, Obi-Wan was not my favorite guy. I was a Luke guy. And I always wanted to see, if Han's going to have a wife and kids, I want the same for Luke, right?
Yeah.
And I see this and I'm thinking, gosh, maybe that would have made a different Luke by the time we got to The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi and all that. But there's something about that trilogy and that everlasting story that's been going on since in the EU that intrigued me, and I've always been a big fan of it. so that's where it is. There's nothing like, oh, I'm romantically chasing Mara
Right.
Jade.
Right.
I
No,
I
no,
think
no.
she's a good character.
I just there's a lot of people who share your sentiment. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, right on.
there's a lot of people who share that sentiment, and I never got it. I was never a huge Mara Jade fan. I liked the character in that original Zahn trilogy. I like the idea of
The Emperor's Hand
the Emperor's
aspect of it.
hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was a really cool concept that
Yeah.
kind of morphed, I guess, almost into Inquisitors and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Really,
But
that's true.
but to be that on the inside of what was going on with the Emperor and everything, to the point that she's almost brainwashed that she has to kill Luke Skywalker. Like, as I recall, like, it's killing the clone that basically sets her free, when it's all said and done. But she absolutely hates Luke, and I don't remember how they got together ultimately, because I know that Luke also met someone else one time that was like a Force user that he fell in love with and stuff. And, I guess she died, Mr. Coach Klein. But for him and Mara Jade to end up together, to me that felt like way fanboyish and weird. And I I know George never cared for her, but my thing is, if you're going to do Mara Jade at this point, it's almost too late to do her well. Or do her
Yeah, I mean,
is.
that's what I was thinking. Like, what story would they be able to weave her into? They'd have to go back and include Luke, and I just I don't know. I'm not sure.
Or could they just do an Emperor's Hand tale?
They
Like a
could.
story just of her being the Emperor's Hand, doing all this
Right.
dirty work behind the scenes.
Sure.
Maybe I also think about that idea where, like, how would she get woven in the way she did, and that makes you realize just how good what Zahn. And of course, he was one of the first to do it. To really tie in the stuff to the original trilogy and just do it kind of deftly, like the Imperial Remnant, and to have a character like Thrawn who's been out there, and he was out on the outskirts because the Emperor didn't like the aliens and that sort of thing. And it's like, you kind of see that in the movies, like it's reflected in the films. Like, there's not aliens that work for the Empire; they're all human beings, and that sort of thing. So, but the only thing that Thrawn did that I just did not like was, like, doing away with Ben, like that whole conversation at the beginning of Heir to the Empire with Luke and Ben, where just before Luke has hot chocolate.
But Lando gave it to him. So
And Lando brought it back from some distant world. But but he has it, and Ben's like, I've got to go now. And it's like, I don't like that. I don't like that at all, because you still had Yoda and you still had Anakin out there. And I know that George didn't want him to use anybody like that, but it's like, you can't just do away with Ben and say he's now lost in the Force. Like, this is immortality. He's more powerful than you could possibly imagine. Luke needs to have his guides there along with him. And and
you
another
gotta
thing I think we
figure.
got.
Go ahead.
There's another thing I think we kind of got cheated out on in the sequel trilogy, is like, an Anakin Luke conversation. Look, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
This is a free place to geek.
I know, but it's just like, I've done it so much, and people are so tired of it. I don't. All it would have taken was one conversation with Anakin
Yeah.
for Luke to say, I'm doing the wrong thing by trying to shut down the Jedi. Like, Anakin should have been the voice of reason for Luke. You know what I mean? Like, Anakin should have been that voice whispering in his ear, like, don't worry about the darkness you sense in him. You brought me back. You can stop him from going down that path altogether. There's so many things that just got completely disregarded. And,
Yeah.
so
We
anyway.
can't go back though.
I know. I listen. I know you can't go back. I don't want to do any of this world between worlds stuff. That's absolutely, like, I don't. The minute you brought time travel into Star Wars, it's a big mistake. I'm Scott Reichen.
Yeah, Scott. I appreciate the comments there, Scott.
Yeah,
You're bringing your A
Glad
game.
that Scott joined us today.
I know. He'll be so glad to know that he did it.
Yeah, exactly. His other episode got scrapped.
I sat here for 2 hours and wasn't even on the show.
By the way, he did send me a message and said, I should. Oh, sorry. Lasso, go. Yes, I named my dog Lasso after Ted Lasso.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
I'll have to edit that later at 1:44. Thank you very much.
Barbecue sauce.
But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It was a bad thing to get rid of Ben there for us, for the fans. But you got to think at that time, George is looking, and when people are telling him, he's like, hey, I might have other plans, and maybe I don't want to keep going back to the Force Ghost for the next,
Mm.
the next trilogy, and then this and that. Because I mean, by that time, it was already in his.
Well, he didn't
head.
have to, because the books are the books and the movies are the movies.
Yeah.
That's what he had to say.
GL canon. GL canon is all he
This
cared
is
about.
G level canon.
Yeah, that's all.
You don't mess with it, George. I'm George. I'm Luke.
Well, I've kept you guys on here for a long time,
Oh
but
my gosh, he's running out of here like Lasso
No.
runs into Bark. Can't edit it now. 144.
what
That's right. You got to leave it in now.
I'm leaving it
144.
now.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say is, I always thought all these different topics and monopolize
love
the
it.
conversation.
Love it.
You know what, Michael? I said Mike. Michael, this is your first. This is your first time on the Rule of the Galaxy podcast. Is there a topic, after listening to us a number of times, whether with Glosson or Rifen or just us, that a topic you want to hit
Oh man.
that should be brought to the Rule of the Galaxy table?
Yeah, I mean, let's see. What can I come up with that's ridiculous? No, I
Wow.
think that we covered a lot of good stuff today, and it's everything that I wanted to talk about. So it's good. You came at us with some good topics, and I think we covered everything. I do wonder if Lucasfilm is going to bring Indiana Jones back in some way, shape, or fashion. They're about to build a new ride. Could we continue with more Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford? Would we be okay with that?
That is a great question. I'm gonna let
Because
Steve go first.
Lucasfilm, their only IP can't be Star Wars. They
Mhm.
need to. They tried with Willow, and God love them, that didn't work. But I don't know. Can we continue with Indiana Jones? I think that there's some untapped things that they can do with that character.
I think you've seen it done. I think that Lucas did it with the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles and everything, and people enjoyed that. It didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think that's one of those things where the series was too expensive. Like, they really,
Right.
it
Yes.
was a ambitious kind of thing going on. I don't know that it was in a decent time slot for people to check out either. But
Mhm.
I look, Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is Harrison Ford. I don't know that you could get away, even though it's only been 5 movies. I mean, I don't know that you can get away with recasting Indy.
Oh man.
You might. I mean, unless there's a George Lazenby out there that wants to do it one time as the palate cleanser,
Right.
and
Right.
then let
Right.
someone
Right.
else do it. As
I
far as
just loved the only reason I'm asking that is because I loved the beginning of The Last Crusade when you
yeah,
had River Phoenix
Oh yeah.
as Indiana Jones. I was a guy that was into movies, and so I was like, oh, that's freaking River Phoenix, and he was a up and coming star at the time, and I just think that there's so much untapped potential with like a younger. I'm not saying like you have to go like super young, like the kid that was in Young Indy, or find that balance, like a Sean Patrick Flannery age at the time that came out, or River Phoenix. Like, there's a lot that they could do with that. Storytelling, but bringing us up to Temple of Doom or whatever.
right, Finn Wolfhard.
So somebody like that. Yeah, I mean,
So
No,
of
I know. I was kidding about that.
of that age though. I mean,
so you mentioned Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is Harrison Ford. I think almost everybody would say the same thing about Han Solo. But by the time I got to the end of the Solo movie,
mhm.
2 hours in, I was like, hey, you know what? I can live with this. I can go forward and see if there's more fun stuff going on
Yeah.
here. Let's go see some Glover and Alden Ehrenreich,
I
adventures.
mean, I'm not one of those like hashtag make Solo 2 happen guys.
No.
But I was okay with Alden Ehrenreich in that role. I mean, I think that we're far too precious with some of these. This actor has to be this character, and no one else can do it. I mean, we're just far too precious with that type of stuff.
Absolutely disagree with both of you.
I'm just
Wow.
telling you.
No, I'm kidding. I'm just
I mean,
I'm just
look at
kidding.
how
Listen,
many- yeah.
I think that we were for. gosh, this sounds horrible, but we were kind of forced to think about these things as fans when Carrie Fisher passed away.
Sure.
You know, and the choice that the studio made was we'll move forward with her likeness, you know, and J.J. Abrams did. It was real creative the way they were able to work her into, you know, into Rise of Skywalker and everything. But how much more freedom would they have had if they'd have been willing to recast? You know,
there's like all those rumors. Millie Bobby Brown should do like at the time there was those rumors that were around.
I think with things like Solo, with things like Obi-Wan, where you see the little girl playing Leia as a little girl, I think that you kind of, I don't know if they mean to do this, but it does kind of get you in a mindset of other people playing these characters may be okay. And, you know, but at this point, for what purpose? Like, are we going to go back in time? Same thing with Indiana Jones. Like, what stories are there to be told?
Anything.
You know, right? You know, so I mean, that's the thing. If you're going to do that, you can't be precious about canon either.
Right.
You know, you've got to be willing to just say, here is a movie or two about Indiana Jones, and it's just like an adventure story about this character, and he's on this adventure. It doesn't matter when it happened in his life. It doesn't matter, you know, how this affects.
I'd love to see like when Indy first met Sala and the adventures they went on together.
Absolutely, I think that'd be a fun thing to see.
It'd just be fun. I mean, and they can't just rely on Star Wars if they want to continue to be like a viable, vibrant studio. They can't just rely on Star Wars.
And I'll say this about Willow, like that's all their fault.
It is. Oh my God.
You know,
it was totally self-inflicted.
Willow is not a highly regarded movie. I think people remember it more fondly than they really originally accepted it.
Like
I saw Willow in the theater as a kid, loved it from the get-go. Like it has been one of my favorite movies. You know, for as long as it has been around. I remember the night I went to see it. It's the first movie I remember running longer than a standard movie time, is what I was used to as a kid. We were waiting and waiting and waiting outside of our little theater to get in because we had one screen at our little theater, and those people did. I guess the theater owners didn't realize it went as long as it did, and so I just remember waiting. It felt like forever to get in there to see this movie, and I didn't know anybody. I wasn't a cinephile. I was like 11 or 12 years old. You know, I just knew that here's an adventure, here's fun, here's this excitement stuff. Love the music, love the movie. It's creepy where it needs to be creepy. It's funny where it needs to be funny. And if you can't in 2025, after everyone has seen Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, do a good fantasy adventure with Warwick Davis, for crying out loud, you know, that's on you. And God love them. I feel like that's a franchise that is going to be squandered by Lucasfilm because
it's done.
You know, and that's just unfortunate.
I mean, you can't even watch the show anymore. It's
gone. You had to take the show off altogether.
Wiped from existence.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy. It's just so messed up. You know,
so weird.
But that's, you know, so yeah. But you're right. Lucasfilm's only IP can't be Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean that's.
But
that's where I wonder. I wonder if that's the unfortunate legacy of Kathleen Kennedy. She never tried to expand Lucasfilm in any way. I mean, I know she tried to get that Children of Blood and Bone IP in that was announced at some point, but they ended up selling it off or whatever.
Radioland Murders 2.
Right, exactly. Howard the Duck 2. Why not? I mean,
Marvel crossover.
Marvel crossover.
That's Kevin Feige. Yeah. That's Kevin Feige's into Lucasfilm.
That's right. So, and I know that's, I mean, Marvel, obviously all they're doing is Marvel stuff, but they've got so many stories available to them that they can utilize for that. And they're called Marvel. Lucasfilm, it's not called Star Wars film. I mean, I just feel like if they want to continue to exist and be relevant at all, they've got to try and expand on something they've got, or try and find another IP to grab and do some stuff with it. I mean, I don't know. It's just, I just worry that Lucasfilm just goes away. Yeah. I mean, especially if Mando and Grogu is a bomb.
Oh, Don't say that.
I mean, I don't think it will be, but just say it is. I mean, I don't know.
Mando and Grogu is the bomb.
That's right. That's right. God forbid that happened. But I mean, I just don't know. I don't know what the future is if that movie doesn't do well. There's too much riding on that movie, and it scares me to death.
There's a lot.
I haven't thought about that, but you're right. I mean, there really is at this point. Yeah, because if that movie doesn't do well, they'll put the kibosh on anything that's in pre-production. You know.
I mean, unless Sean Levy like hurries up and actually starts rolling now, like getting footage shot now and gets the film started, then it could just.
I think
go away.
I think.
Not to end it on such a morbid.
No. Well,
No.
And I think that's the legacy of George Lucas. I think that you realize just how much Lucas was Lucasfilm. He was a visionary. I said back when Disney bought Lucasfilm and we started talking 7, 8, and 9. I said there are two things that are going to have to be key for this movie. One is there's a visual language to Star Wars storytelling that is it's not in vogue anymore. The wipes, the irises, the steady camera that doesn't really move too much, but the editing is the key and that sort of thing. I said that, and I said, and the other thing is, how will Lucasfilm continue now to push the medium forward?
Right.
Because that's the other thing that George Lucas did. Like or hate, anything that he did, whether it's with the special editions or the prequels, Lucas was always pushing the medium of filmmaking forward to make it more accessible to filmmakers, to allow filmmakers' imagination to expand. He always wanted the best sound. He wanted the best video quality. And that's why you have ILM. He wanted the best effects. He wanted the best. You had the creature shop. You had all these different things that spun out of just making Star Wars that people came, to use Skywalker sound and that sort of thing. So THX, for crying out loud,
right?
So that is the component that's missing to Lucasfilm. Is there's no drive to
the volume to some extent did that.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I was excited about the idea of the volume, but I don't know that anyone knows how to use it very well.
No, Greg Fraser might be the only person on the planet that can use it well, and he was the DP of the first season of Mando.
Yep.
And so I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. It's like but that's how digital technology was, wasn't it? All of it. Lucas was the first guy to dip his toe in and say, I guess Spielberg with Jurassic Park was like, we can really do this, but it was ILM.
Sure,
to say we can create things on the screen that aren't really there. And so Lucas said, let's do a whole character, and then Weta said, we can do it too, and before you know it, you had a whole couple of decades of not only doing that, and now we all complain about too much CGI, but also the trend going toward digital filming rather than on film, and I just remember J.J. Abrams bragging about, we're going back to, whatever millimeter, I don't know the millimeters, film that we're doing on Force Awakens. It's like, why is that a brag? Why is that a flex? The idea of digital filmmaking gave editors time to get things done quicker, and you didn't have the processing and the dailies and all. You could do it right there. And
well, now, Steve, I'm going to have to, we wouldn't have had the Steel Pecker if it wasn't for them trying to go practical effects.
I'm okay with practical effects. I'm talking about, it's not a flex to say we're using 70 millimeter film instead of digital.
But I just know you love the Steel Pecker.
Well, I'll tell you this. There are better practical effects in the Great Ewok Adventure than the Steel Pecker. So the Steel Pecker is like basically one of those darn water things where the water pours in and the bird goes ta-dunk, ta-dunk.
Oh yes.
Stupid bird. What a stupid.
So basically, Abrams, just catching up on that real quick, Abrams pretty much just said that because Disney was under the impression that everyone hated the prequels. The
Right.
Wars were worthless. We're going to
Right.
take you back to
Yeah.
the way George did
Yeah.
it in
Yeah.
I
1977.
think half of it was a marketing scheme, in my opinion.
Oh,
I
sure.
don't even know that JJ really even cared.
But the thing is, it's not a flex. That
No.
was my thing.
No.
It's like what you're doing is you're looking at what George Lucas is doing. It's like, oh, he's stupid. This guy's an idiot. He doesn't know how to make movies. And it's like, I'm sorry. Are you telling me that here's what I know about digital filmmaking and digital projection in a movie theater. The first movie I ever saw digitally projected in a movie theater was Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
And I saw it after seeing it in a couple of other theaters. And we got to the point where Anakin and Obi-Wan are fighting, and I started seeing these black flecks appear on the screen, and I thought, oh, the film's messed up. I'm like, no, wait, this is a digital projection. Oh my gosh, that's ash falling in the sky. And I had not seen that
Yeah.
at all. And so I'm like, okay, I see you, George Lucas. I
Yeah.
see you, digital photography and digital film,
Totally.
projecting. So it's just I think the reason he's sorely missed is because not necessarily he's a visionary, but he pushed the medium forward, and it takes a visionary to do that. I thought I was about to have to close us up, Joe.
No. Typical Joe Molinaro. Record and something always goes haywire in the background.
Well,
I'm just surprised there hasn't been a tornado to rip through my house. So,
I'm
hey,
told
we're
that the
doing good.
worst of it's not going to get to you till like 9 o'clock, Mike.
Okay, so it's slowed down a lot then.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've got
Which
plenty
could
of
be
time.
bad.
Interesting.
Could be
That
good. Could be bad.
That could
Get
be.
everybody in the basement. You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
We've got a good bunker down here.
You put on a helmet as per James Spann's instructions.
Well, yeah, there's helmets and put on a life vest, and I'm
A life vest? Are you near the
just
near the
thinking-
water?
I'm thinking to myself, what good is that stuff really gonna do if a
He's in the
tornado rips
basement.
through your house?
If any flooding occurs, he's going to need the life jacket to get him.
The most secure room in my house by design is my Star Wars room. I'm
Love it.
surrounded by Star Wars collectibles in this room, and it's the most secure room. So hopefully none of this will get damaged.
What level of collectibles are we talking about?
Oh man, I've got the original Cartoon Network's figs over here.
I love those.
I love those, and then I've got the Macquarie ones over here from Celebration 4, and so I collected all those. I got some Ep 1 figures there, and then right here is my Ahsoka shrine. I've got the 6-inch, the 3 3/4. I got the bunch of pops.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of Ahsoka stuff. I mean,
Okay, cool.
but I've really had to pull back on all of it.
Sure.
I mean, it's gotten so expensive. All of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done the same thing. I honestly, the only thing I've bought in the last 6 months has been the Captain Rex helmet and the new release of the Captain Rex that came out in the new packaging from the Ahsoka series.
Oh yeah. That's good stuff.
I've got so many things of the other, Obi-Wan and Luke and some other of my favorite characters, but I missed a lot of the clones. Like I didn't purchase a lot of that time. And Rex is my guy. I don't know why. I feel like he's kind of the same moral compass as the Jedi, but without the Jedi powers. So I kind of follow along with him. I kind of ride with Rex. My wife, I said, if I ever got a Star Wars tattoo, it would be the Rex. It would be the eyes on the helmet right there. I'd get them
Like a tramp stamp, or
You get it on your forehead?
I told her I would get a right here between the shoulder blades on the back. That way nobody would. I've got a big rule that if you're going to get a tattoo, please get it to where it's not on your neck, on your face, on your this. My son is already.
you don't want to pull a Cody Rhodes and have it on your face right there.
So that would be my one that I would get of Star Wars, I think. So, but there's just something about him. I don't know. I like the character, even though he's not. He's not on the Mount Rushmore of Star Wars characters. He's still somebody that it just.
He's a substantial character, though. I mean, when you think about the amount of screen time he had because of the Clone Wars and everything, you're looking at and Rebels eventually. Yeah. You're looking at probably more screen time than Han Solo.
There's a certain generation that I bet would call him more for them. I mean, they're those Clone Wars kids, man, that knew every freaking name of every clone that there was. I was just like, there was this kid at church that would come up to me and talk about Clone Wars episodes. And he knew all the names of all of them. I'm like, man, I love your passion.
Yeah.
I could not tell you what, I knew Rex and Cody, and that was about all I knew.
The more I got into the collecting afterwards, and I was doing the search, that whole COVID shutdown time, we had extra
Right.
in our hands and extra time.
Yeah, when everybody ruined the market.
Yeah, I'm gonna go grab one of those and one of these. I know I'm gonna get that one over. I'm gonna get Wolf. I'm gonna get, and all that. Yeah, that was a good fun time. But Rex sticks with me. There's an artist, and I'll have to grab her card that I got at one of the recent conventions I went to, and she does a lot of the prequel era art where it's got like Anakin, Padme, Ahsoka, Rex, all that, but it's in more of a cartoonized
Oh, cool.
way, and
Yeah.
talk about some of her work. I think I've shown those to you before, Steve.
Yeah.
And I just love them. So in what used to be my office, because I've switched offices, I had them up in there, but since I moved to this new office, I haven't made the switch to all that stuff. But yeah, my grandson, he loves seeing those up on the wall. When I've still got my Star Wars stuff, because now it's a playroom, so I've got all that on the wall with Star Wars stuff surrounding him in there. So, but yeah, Rex, that's all I bought. I haven't jumped into some of the other collecting that's been going on, and I'm
Yeah,
not like Alfie, who's on our show, who pretty much once a week someone stops at his work, who works with him, goes to his truck in the parking lot and drops off Star Wars stuff. I'm
that's
still
awesome.
waiting for that to be my
That's
my
awesome.
thing. Yeah.
I'm
So
just excited now that I know that, and I hope all your listeners start doing this as well. Send Scott Rifen all your Star Wars Burger King glasses.
oh my God.
We just need to start flooding his mailbox.
He's
I'll
got
take them.
43
I'll
of them, he said.
I know.
I'll take them.
Yeah, we need to start. No. I just want Scott Rifen to be getting. Not that
Yeah.
we're going to put his address out there, but that somehow he just needs to be getting every single Star Wars Burger King cup.
Well, get them to me, and I'll get them to him. Once I pick out the ones that I need.
I've already spoken to him about it, and I said you can't give all these to Steve. I'm going to have to take some of them because
If he's got one, I didn't know that was happening. I'm going to have to reach out to
He
him.
said he's got like 40 something of them.
Well,
because
I've got all the I've got all 4 Return of the Jedi glasses. I've got 3 of 4 Empire glasses, and I've got
Nice.
2 of the original Star Wars glasses.
okay.
Okay.
So I'm lacking.
I just have this picture and this vision of every day.
Mm.
Scott Rifen's mailbox has a Burger King glass in
You want me
it.
to give his address?
No, I've got his address.
I'm
But
saying,
we don't need to
I'll give it out right now.
Oh,
Hey, give me my address out. What are you doing?
don't do that.
I am not responsible for anything you say at this point right now,
Do not
Steve.
do that.
But no, it's fun, and he and I he's been exchanging messages with me today because he said we had some really good content that's trash yesterday.
No, look, as long as all of us have been podcasting, that happens.
It does.
You lose content. You have to just learn to live with it.
You lose
Steve-
content. Sometimes you lose whole hard drives. Sometimes your host, your web host says we changed servers and you lost everything.
Oh gosh.
So I love that Steve and I have had a show once where I completely got derailed, was lost. He finished the show by himself. I had to wait until I was flying somewhere to listen to the show like the next day after I edited it, just to hear how Steve finished the show.
Basically, Mikey, if you're hosting a Steam yard,
Yeah.
and you leave, and I'm still in the room.
Oh, yeah.
It'll keep recording me till I log off.
That's right.
So that's what happened, and I didn't know if it would do it or not. So I basically did Geek Out Loud
That's awesome.
on Rule the Galaxy, and that was
I think I remember that. I remember that.
I dreamed to be able to do that on the Deucecast, and Dave be like, "Well, Steve kind of took over, but we're not playing that."
And the other thing that Steve and I have discussed, what was it? The hot tub.
Oh,
we did a hot tub, and
And my hard drive crashed before I got to put that out there to the
Golly.
people. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, or you're like Rifen, and you have content that you could put out, but you just never take the time to edit it.
It's so much work to edit it, and
Right.
I don't have the time anymore. They're just there, sitting there.
They're just sitting.
I've got 4 hours with David Collins.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
Well, gentlemen,
This was fun.
I'm gonna break it down here. I appreciate you both.
Yeah, I
being
told my
here.
wife, I'm like, marinara only goes for like an hour, so it
Yeah,
won't
that's
be
what I
long.
told my wife too. I was like, it'll be an hour. It'll be fine.
No, not today. Not when I have the quality and the talent of you two. It's got to be a longer show. Even with my dogs interrupting us at 1:44 on the show.
That's right.
But any closing thoughts, Michael? It's our first time meeting here.
This was awesome, man.
Face on this, I really appreciate it. You've always been one of those just great, people that comments while we're having the show or after the show, making comments on what we're doing on social media. So thank you for doing that, and tell people where to find you, where to check out your podcast, everything like that, real quick. And
Awesome.
any closing thoughts you have.
Yeah, first of all, it was a joy, in all honesty, to be on here. I love the opportunity. I've never done a Star Wars podcast
Nice.
of my own, so it's nice when I can be a guest on someone else's Star Wars podcast, because look, Star Wars is my passion. I've loved it since I was a kid, and it was my gateway into movies, which is now my passion, just movies in general. But without that foundation of Star Wars, I would never have branched out into Spielberg, to Zemeckis, and all the others. It took, Lucas to get me going down the road of loving movies even more than I did when I was a kid. So that's why I host the Deucecast movie show. I've been doing so for 15 years, apparently. We will continue to go strong. There's no reason that I was close to wanting to stop it at 500. But luckily Dave talked me out of it, and we're still going strong. And I'm excited about talking about movies every week. We release them every Wednesday on any podcatcher. Just look up the Deucecast, and you can find three guys talking about movies. And we have guests on every once in a while, just that are part of our Discord that just love talking about movies. And we try and keep up with all the recent stuff. And we're just finishing Oscar season, and now we're moving into what we call Deuces season, because the Deuces are way better than the Oscars. We try and correct everything the Oscars got wrong. So in April we'll be releasing our Deuces episode to tell you the real winners of 2024. So
Well, David better give me that script then.
he's working on it. He's working on it. So yeah, just again, Joe, just thank you so much for having me on, man. It was really fun. And anytime you need somebody to come on and talk about Star Wars, I'd be happy to come on anytime.
Hey, if you want, you could be my Jay Leno and Joan Rivers. If you need to bail, you can. Steve and Scott, they're both too busy all the time. They
All the
can't do
time,
this
yeah.
stuff. So, heck yeah, no. There's times I'm chasing 3 grandkids. I'm busy with multiple jobs, chasing people all over the country. Hey, I might need to rely on you sometime. So be prepared if I make the call.
I'll be here. I'll pick up that bat phone for sure.
You got it. Thanks so much, man. Steve, how about you?
I'm just waiting for the day when you realize it's not a big deal to have me on, and then I'll be sad. No, it's been good. Thanks. Geekoutpodcast.com. And if there's ever anything new up, that's where it'll be. And then from there you can find out everything else. How do you guys pronounce this guy's name?
Dien Nub. That's I don't know.
Nine
Nub. I don't know.
I always said Neen Num, and then I heard people start saying Nine Num, so I guess it's Nine Num, but
4LOM.
Look at them lips, man. Ain't that something?
Man.
Gee whiz. Vintage Star Wars, ladies and gentlemen.
Right. Open mouth kisses with that has got to be crazy.
Oh.
When he's laughing. His laugh is great.
Hey, I want to write a song. I open mouth kiss, Nine Num.
Let's not go that
way. Man, I'm looking, and you know what, Steve? One of my, I told you before that recording you gave me of the song you put together and the live stuff of Scott running over the.
Oh yeah, the kitty coon. Yeah,
yeah, the kitty coon. My wife died. Listen to that. She just thought that was so funny. So thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
You guys have been great. I have been not sleeping a lot over the past few days, busy, and you know what? It's a Saturday night. I'm going to do old man stuff. I'm going to put on a movie and get a good night's sleep and rest because it's been a long few days.
Right. Well, we're going to be hunkering down and
yeah, I'm going to be hunkering down apparently later than I thought it was going to.
Yeah,
you got it. Well, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for everybody. Always follow us at Rule the Galaxy. We're on all podcast platforms. Email me with some thoughts, ideas, anything you want to talk about on the show. RuleTheGalaxySW@gmail.com. geekingoutlowd.com. And until next time, as Steve loves, may the force be with you.